Welcome to Lessons from Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Brian Beckcom. In the year 2000, Jared Dunten was paralyzed in a diving accident in the Rio Grande after a camping trip in the Chisos Mountains. Jared had a friend with him who was able to fish him from the Rio Grande and keep him alive until he was taken to the hospital in Alpine and then subsequently moved to the hospital in Lubbock and then to TIER in Houston. In 2005, Jared was awarded a student scholarship by the MFPA, the Mouth and Foot Painters Association, which is based in Liechtenstein and requires a 2-hour process. Jared has studied with painter Phillip Wade and world-renowned master painter Edward Povey. Jared's works have been on exhibition at the Bass Concert Hall in downtown Houston, and his most recent pieces are available at TIER Memorial Hermann in Houston, as well as TCU and other places. Jared has a relentless spirit. He continues to, as he calls it, paint himself out of the wheelchair, advocating research for paralysis, for spinal cord injury, and makes everybody's lives just a little bit better. Jared lives right outside of Austin with his wife and 2 boys, and he's a true source of inspiration for me and thousands of other people. In the podcast, Jared and I talk about what went through his mind after he first realized that he would be paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. We talk about how he got into painting, his creative process, which is really interesting because Jared is also, he's a copywriter for an advertising agency, so he's always been a creative person. And he talks about his creative process, both when he's commissioned for paintings, like specific paintings, and when he's just painting something on his own. Jared is an inspirational guy. I've known Jared for more than 25 years, and I hope that you will find him as inspirational as I do. And now I give you Jared Dunten. Hey, everybody, this is Brian Beckcom at VB Attorneys, and I've got a really special guest. I've been looking forward to talking to my next guest for a very long time. He's a super busy guy. He has got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm really happy that he agreed to come on the podcast. I think everybody's really going to enjoy listening to Jared. So, Jared, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Ryan. I appreciate it.
And so I got to ask you, first question I got to ask you, and I'm asking the same question of all my guests.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I assume you and your family have been in quarantine. So how you've got two boys and your wife. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. Thank you for asking.
How are the boys doing?
They're doing great. It's day by day, but they're doing great. It's one of those things that, like everybody, it's an adjustment. We started, around spring break, whenever that was. Everyone's kind of lost track of time and days. But yeah, it's been going okay. It's, as things loosen up and everyone gets a little more, casual, I think things have gotten better. But yeah, we are all doing well, thankfully, all healthy, all, the big joke going around with my friends around and all of us is everyone's had it. Everyone gets it, and it's, and I get it too. It's tough stuff. I had a good friend of mine who's, he lost his dad, and so it hits close to home, so. Yeah. When I do talk to my friends and, everyone's like, Jesus, this is terrible. Let's move on. It's like, man, I've been on a ventilator.
Yeah.
And not something you want to do if you can avoid. So, those kind of things, it's like, you got to be careful and mindful all the time of that stuff. And all the stuff that's going on, trying to follow the news and stay positive. Which is, that's a fine line to walk, but things seem to be doing better. But how about y'all?
We're doing good. I was talking last week to a Methodist pastor, and he has 2 teenage daughters, and I was telling him that I have 2 teenage boys and a 12-year-old girl who might as well be a teenager, and we've been in the house for essentially 2 months together. And he was like, well, man, college age is way better. But you've got kids, you've got boys that are even younger. What are your boys, 7, 8?
They're 8 now.
8 years old. So what do you guys So how is that having two 8-year-old boys in the house for basically 3 straight months?
Man, I'll tell you, right when all this hit, I immediately started looking at site profiles for submariners, submariners, finding out like what makes a good submarine person. I
Yeah.
was like, thankfully it's not that bad, but a lot of OCD. So there's some acceptable stuff, and you want to keep things clean and tidy. I think about it as being on a ship. It's confined, got a lot of people, got to get along, got to have our safe places to get away to. But
Has anybody had to walk the plank yet?
I have not. I have been swabbing the deck, mainly, in good form. My wife's captain. The boys, I think, are more like castaways or stowaways, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm just swapping the deck, trying to keep my head down, my mouth shut, and going on. But yeah, it's been okay. They're actually out today. My mother-in-law and father-in-law have a pool, and so they can safe distancing, be outside and swim. So that's been a big,
Nice
huge thing. Yeah. So that's why it's so quiet.
Yeah, that's the one thing is like, especially guys our age.
Yeah.
I think it was Chris Rock who said middle-aged guys with kids want 3 things: food, sex, and silence. And not necessarily in that order. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Jared,
the order shuffles around.
yeah. Yeah. Well, Jared, so a lot of people know who you are, and I've already introduced you, but for the people who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about where you're from,
Sure.
where you grew up, who you are, and how you kind of got to be where you are today.
Well, I grew up kind of right outside of Austin in the Lake Travis area, and went there for a long time. St. Michael's eventually, and then on to A&M, and then Southwest, and then ended back up in Austin, and worked and still work for GSDM. It's a great ad agency in Austin.
You're a copywriter?
Yeah, as a writer.
Yeah.
And I've been working remotely for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So when I talk to people or I hear about the stuff that's going on, I'm a little like, well, welcome to my world. Like I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now, granted, potential death and that sort of wickedness has not been a problem, thankfully. Other than just like trying to be healthy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as like working remotely, just it's been going on for a while for me. So this isn't new stuff. And I joke like I've actually seen more people that I work with in the last month than I have in the last 10 to 15 years. Because usually it's over teleconference and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's been nice. I feel kind of bad. I'm like, I don't want to be, playing the fiddle as Rome Burns, but it's like, well, it's really nice. Everyone's all inside now, and we're all working via computer and whatever other formats. So I've seen a lot of people, and I've had some amazing quality time with my boys. That's actually been really cool. So,
well, so Jared, you were, the reason we know each other is because when you went to A&M, you were in the Corps of Cadets, and so was I. You were remind me what outfit were you in? Were you in
L1?
L1, that's right.
L1. What about you?
What's that?
What were you?
I was squadron. So yeah, I was squadron. I was actually what we call a tadpole. So I played basketball my first year, and then I joined Squadron 16 as a freshman, my second year. And so we were at A&M in the Corps together. And then when you were in 2000, when you were, I think you were a senior then, you were on a camping trip, and tell us what happened on that camping trip.
Yeah, I had graduated in 90. Well, I should have been 96. It's class of 96.
Yeah,
ended up finishing up at around 98. I took an extended time, and then I got an internship and was working at the agency, and I was out on my first vacation, and a buddy and I had gone hiking and camping up in the Chisos Mountains, and for a couple days we'd come down the mountains and gone over across the water into Boquillas, and we were over there, and then I dove into the hot springs. Well, I guess it was the river next to the hot springs, and I hit a sandbar, and I don't remember really anything about it, but I broke my neck right at C4 or 5, and thankfully my buddy was able to fish me out of the water. He literally was under the water, found me in the Rio, which if you've ever been in the Rio, it's, hard to see anything.
Yeah.
I should say. And so I was real fortunate. He fished me out of the river and then held me in the water for a couple hours because he wasn't really sure what to do. He was a Boy Scout, and at least he knew enough to know not to move me. And so stood there yelling for help for hours, which, because of the injury, ideally you want to be in a hospital as soon as you can because of the swelling. When you have an accident like that, your spinal cord swells. And what happens is you don't get blood supply to it. So essentially, part of that tissue dies when you don't have blood supply. And so that's a problem. So basically it was, and I don't remember any of this. So he's holding me in the water for a couple hours. And
were you conscious or unconscious at the time?
Well, I don't remember it, but he says I was talking, and he says we both knew it was bad.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to do, so I'm up there. And luckily we had met some people on the Mexican side of the border, and they had heard him after a while. And so they came to see what was going on. And then they went and got the park rangers. The park rangers took a boat, and I was taken from a boat to like a ambulance, and then taken from there to Alpine. And yeah, I don't remember any of this. The story goes that basically at Alpine, they were like, I don't know what to tell you,
Yeah.
Good luck. And so then from there, I was taken to Lubbock, which was, I guess, the first big or closest big hospital at that point. Sorry, I'm a little cotton mouth. And so we went there. I was in ICU for, I think, like a month and a half or 2 months. And it was pretty touch and go because I got really bad pneumonia. Apparently, I took in a bunch of the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
And so I got really sick.
What's your first memory after jumping in the water? Was it in the hospital in ICU?
Yeah, ICU. And that was still really a confusing time because I was on a lot of morphine. What they were trying to do was they were going to suction out my lungs. So I had some nasty stuff in there. So they'd run this thing in my trach hole, and they would pull stuff out of my lungs. And it was really painful, and a lot of morphine. So things were really weird at that point. ICU was a very weird experience, and it's kind of dreamy, and then kind of, like a bad trip, I guess. I don't know, but it was creepy. So I was there for a while, and I got really lucky. Like there was a point where, it was kind of like back and forth, and as far as gonna make it, not gonna make it, won't talk again. I didn't know. And so at the very end, I got really lucky. So what happened is there was a nurse there. I won't tell you her name. She might get in trouble for this. She's probably retired at this point. But so it was kind of towards the end, and the nurse was like, you got to get out of here. She told my parents, you got to get him out of here. He's not going to make it. He's going to end up catching something else, fighting these other things. So between rounds, she slipped me an aspirin to lower my temperature just enough to be able to catch a flight from Lubbock to Houston. And then once I got to Houston, I was in a rehab hospital.
And that's
That was
that's
a tear.
TIRR, tier was what we call it here.
Yes.
And I want to talk about tier a little bit because I've had clients that were in tier that were severely injured, and I know tons of people in Houston know. I call it tier.
Sure.
Tons of
Yeah.
people who know what it is, and I mean it is just. I'm not sure there's a better facility in the entire world for
It's a
the
great
types of
place.
injuries you had. Yeah. So
Right.
you were
Find
taken in care after about 2 months, but before, Jared, so one of the big reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast is because there are people all over the world right now. They're going through really, really hard times. Like none of us alive today have ever been through a pandemic like this.
Right.
None of us alive today have been through a economic situation like this. So a lot of people, I think, are having trouble processing these kinds of situations. Like it just came out of nowhere. And you had the exact same situation. So when was it? I want to know, because you're such an inspiring person. When you first found out that you may not be able to walk for a period of time, because eventually you're going to walk. That's our goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was going to be a period of time where you were going to be in a wheelchair. Like when you first found that out, how do you process that in your head?
Well, if I'm drawing parallels to us collectively, society, to myself, and this news and all this kind of stuff that's going on. At first, you don't believe it, right? It'll never happen.
Yeah.
Really, I was ignorant about what a spinal cord injury meant, what paralysis was. I knew about paralysis. I didn't know how people were actually paralyzed. I didn't know the time frame, right? So I really thought, oh man, 6 months, I'm going to be, parallel bars like you see in the movies.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So, we laughed because I was like, you're going to have to put my gym membership on hold. And can we get, so I'm trying to like coordinate this stuff. When I got to tier, was able to really kind of be more cognizant of what was going on. As I learned about all this, I was like, shit, man, we're in for this is going to be longer than what I thought.
Yeah.
And it still is. I mean, every day I'm like, really? Like, I haven't figured this out. And so I'll tell you some bad advice the doctor gave me. We'll start with the bad stuff first.
Yeah, good. I like that.
So he told me, he's like, you don't eat an elephant all at once. And at the time I just wanted to be like, middle finger, come on, give me something better to go with. And I didn't like it. But I thought about it and I've continued as I'm quoting him today. And it is about breaking it into little bits. It's qubits, if you will. Like, if you look at the big picture, it's overwhelming for all of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you do feel like you've lost control. You've got, you can control some things, but I'm constantly reminded you don't control a lot beyond your nose. Like, it's really just one day at a time, and sometimes 1 minute at a time. And you got to keep those tracks going in your head. This dual track of, all right, so we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna be better. I think we're gonna be stronger. We're gonna be better in some ways. And so you got the long-term track going, and you got the short-term. I'm really hungry. I need water. Those the Maslow's like.
Your immediate needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a balance, and it's constant. And I think I think we're all real hard on ourselves. I think especially in the bubble that we're in, where I live, and I'm guessing where you are, and in our lives. And it's like sometimes if you need perspective, I'm like, dude, flip on the television, get on the front of the computer, look at some world news, and it's like, damn, we got it pretty good.
Yeah.
A fridge full of food, climate controlled rooms, no one's breathing down our necks trying to kill us. So it's like pretty good stuff. So a lot of it is that. And again, this is on a good day.
Yeah.
There are bad days too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you put it the way you put it because, Jared, I found, at least for me personally,
Yeah.
and I think some other people, that when you think about, like, one of the problems with this pandemic right now is it's so big. Like the consequence, it affects literally everybody in every corner of the globe. It
Yeah.
affects people's health. It affects the economic system. We don't really know a lot about it. There's a lot of uncertainty, both from a scientific and an economic standpoint. And so if you start trying to, like you're saying, if you try to eat the elephant in one bite and all you're thinking about is the big picture, it can be
Yeah.
overwhelming for people at times. And
Absolutely.
so sometimes it's better, like you're saying, let's focus on what's in front of us now. Let's focus on what we can control. So I think that's great advice. What I want to hear from you now, and I'm really curious to hear the answer to this question. So you were, I was reading your bio beforehand, and I think you started painting roughly 2 years after you had your incident. And so tell us how you got into painting. Like where did that come from?
I'll tell you, man. I laugh all the time. So I'm like, as I'm painting them, it's like, why did I pick? Well, one, typically something that, isn't necessarily lucrative. And then two, it's not fast, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's like, let's pick the hardest, most antiquated form of anything and do that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. But it really was one of those things like, so I'm in 2000, right? That's my accident. Internet, computers, everything, very different in 2000. You think way back when, and now as things are going even faster, things change even more.
Hard to believe how different it was back then.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, our freshman roommate, so if we were class 97, we were 92. So we started our fifth year in 92. My freshman roommate comes to the door. He's like, I got an email address. What? Well, what are you talking about? What's an email address? Well, now I can message people on campus. That's the dumbest thing ever. It'll never work. That's ridiculous.
Jared, I was a computer science major at A&M, and I was a freshman in 91, and I had an email address. The problem was nobody else did. You couldn't email anybody. There was like 10 people with email addresses.
Yeah, every campus had about 11 people with an email address.
Yeah.
And it was very short-sighted. But I also go back to that memory that I had. I was like, man, I'm never going to do that again. Like, I don't ever want to go, oh, it'll never catch on, because, wow, look at how much it's changed. But my point is, so I was, 2000, it was really a weird, like, what do you do? I mean, for my job as a writer in the ad world, at that point, I did a lot of research online, but, that was what I was using it for. I wasn't like, there was not the social component or, just all the stuff there is now. I mean, it's even hard to explain to someone. It's like, I haven't thought of a good analogy, but yeah, so it's the dark ages of online. So we're 2000, and so I'm still working, but it's still like sending documents via email. And my mom, I think, is sick of seeing me mow. So she's like, I got a cabinet, we paint it. What? That's insane. So I take out the drawer, they take out the drawers, I do one drawer at a time, and paint it. It's a mess. But it probably shut me up for a little bit. And there was a sense of like accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's like if you've got a yard and you mow the yard and you can look at the yard and be like, that was good.
Something you can see that's actually been finished.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was something, there was a physical element to it too. There was a lot of, there's no script, there's no instruction manual. And it's a little bit like what's going on worldwide that is scary, but I'm also like, yeah, but like no one's ever done this.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like walking on the moon, that it's terrifying, it can be, but it's also incredibly liberating. Like, as soon as all this happened, and everyone from our agency is scrambling to go and work from home. And the world is, places that are doing that. It was pretty cool in the sense that like, no one's ever done this. We're all the first. We're all like walking on the moon here.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do. And so to me, that was exciting. It's just like, we get to our age and where we are in the world, it's like, how many times can anyone say we're the first, or, we did something that no one's ever done?
Yeah.
Well, we're here. And this shit's real, and like, it's going on now, and we've never done it. Because you're right, it's been since after the first World War One, they had what was the Spanish flu, right?
Yep.
That went worldwide. And for the most part, globally, I think it's been knocked out since then. So like you said, it's been about 102 years. And not a lot of 102-year-olds remember all that. So that's incredible. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think that's been the most, I don't want to say exhilarating, but like interesting things to all of this is that we're all navigating, or we're all experiencing something that is awful, and there really aren't words for how bad it is, but no one's ever done it.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy to think that. I tell my boys that. I'm like, look, guys, y'all are doing great. There's no plan for this.
Yeah.
It's like, no one, I'm not going to say no one knew it was coming, because there were people that said it was coming. But at the same time, you still don't know what it's going to look like, right?
Right.
How it's going to affect, like you said, every corner of the globe, every little nook and cranny of the market, like everything's changed. And so I think that's a good way to look at it. It's like, maybe it won't go back the way it was. Maybe that's okay too. What's it look like going forward?
I was just talking earlier today, I was talking to somebody about my office, and you just made the comment, maybe things won't go back the way they were, and maybe that's okay. And we were just talking about like remote work at my office. I run a law office, and I have people in my office, and this pandemic, we've been work from home since spring break, that clearly do not need to physically be in the office. There's no reason for them to do that. And some of these people have to drive. I have one lady, her name is Lauren. She has to drive an hour back and forth every day. She does not, and she has kids at home. She doesn't need to be in the office. So we're really right now, and a lot of small businesses are like this, trying to figure out what the future looks like. And nobody knows. And I love the way that you described it as, it's kind of like walking on the moon. There's no footsteps ahead of any of us right now. We're kind of all walking fresh snow, so to speak. And
yeah, it is.
So Jared, tell us, one of the things that I think is really cool is you're a serious artist. I mean, you got a scholarship to.
That might be an oxymoron.
What's that?
No, I'm not. I mean, I know what you're saying.
The Mouth and Foot, the student scholarship to the Mouth and Foot Painters Association in, was that Luxembourg, I think, or Liechtenstein?
Liechtenstein, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great organization.
Yeah.
So they were started in, I think, I want to say it was 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
By a guy named Stegman. And he had lost the use of his arms because of polio, and became a really accomplished artist using his mouth to hold a paintbrush and that sort of thing. And he started this way back when, and it's been going, and they represent artists all over the world.
Yeah.
People use their feet, people use their mouth, and they, basically put work on postcards, calendars, all that sort of stuff. But it's a really good way for people in different countries to get their work out, to make money, all these things. And they're great. They're based, so their American office is based in Atlanta. And
Okay.
I talk to them periodically. And basically what you do is you send work to them every year. And so I usually send anywhere from 5 to 7 to 15 pieces every year.
Nice.
Goes to them, and they send it, and they catalog it, and then they use it. And so it's a pretty cool organization. They're really great. It was one of those things that I think, I don't even know how I got started with them, but it's a long process. It's a slow moving machine. So like you submit work, and then they look at stuff and review it, and then they had someone come. Once they had gone through that process, then they fly someone to meet you and to watch you paint and talk to you and that sort of stuff. And the whole thing took about 2 years before you're actually accepted. And that's how that works. And then yeah, they're great.
How did you, so how did you, you both had to, because I assume you didn't grow up as a painter, so you had to learn how,
Oh,
the
right.
principles of painting that
Yeah,
apply to all painters, and then you had to learn how to paint using
yeah.
your mouth, which is obviously a different type of technique. So walk us through how it was you kind of learned the principles of painting, and then
I
after
did.
that, how you learned how to do it with your mouth.
It was so. So it really kind of all kind of comes together in that, they talk about advertising is where art and commerce meet. Uh, I might get punched in the face for saying that, but like, it's one of those places where you do have a lot of talented people in the art world, and uh, trying to you're trying to do or make something more than just hawking a product, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to create something sometimes, and so on a good day. So I was in that world already as a writer, and you work with an art director, and so I was fortunate that I was in this world. It was a pretty creative world, and so I got to see kind of like the early uh, digital camera, high-res images, how you're putting these things together.
Photoshop, stuff like that,
Photoshop,
being
all
able to post produce different things.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm looking at prints and posters that we've all grown up with, Van Gogh, Picasso, all these monster people, artist-wise. And I'm looking at the quality, I'm like, quality sucks, man. Like, this could be better.
Yeah.
There's no reason, because I had seen them in real life. And you're like, well, the poster looks nothing like the original. And so I was like, now, this is something I could do or make or improve upon. And so I really liked the idea too of the process itself, creating something. When as a writer, watching all that stuff, you basically can like write a bunch of stuff, and let's say a client likes it and they decide to use that. Then it's the oh shit, they bought it. Now we're going to make it.
Yeah.
And how are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of logistics, and I like the process. I like learning about not only creating an image with, say, a high-res camera, which 20 years ago was foreign, or not a lot of people talked about that stuff, right? Now it's pretty commonplace, but I just like the process. And so painting was this real weird. I started with watercolors because to me it was like all I needed was the paper, the watercolor, and the water, and a brush, right?
Yeah.
Not much to it. Like, let's start with
Simple.
let's say, yeah, simple. And then as I continued, I started asking some artists that were local, like, can I watch? Can I take classes and that sort of stuff? Real non-formal, and learning about oils, and there's in some ways, just to get a canvas and put some paint on there, you can do that.
Yeah.
But then you learn about the different techniques, and I'm still learning. It's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah.
I always joke that the paint I'm working on is just practice for the next, because I really, it's ongoing.
There's no end. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, you're right, exactly.
You know, there's a great book. I don't know if you've read this. If you haven't read this, I would recommend it. I can't recommend it highly enough to you. It's called Painting as a Pastime, and it was written by Winston Churchill. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I have heard of it, and I think I've read quotes, and it's an incredible way to look at things differently
Yeah.
and train your brain in a different way.
Absolutely. And Churchill talks about that. He says once you start painting, and it's kind of like photography or artistic things. Once you start painting, you start seeing the world differently. You start seeing colors. Oh,
Yeah.
how would I represent that? What kind of shading would I use? Things of that nature. But the other thing he talks about, Jared, and I want you to speak to this a little bit, because it sounds like what you're telling us is the painting was kind of a natural offshoot of your creative. You already part of a creative community.
Yes.
So the painting was kind of a natural offshoot of that. But one of the things that Churchill talks about in the beginning of the book, and he kind of describes it in military terms because that's kind of the way he was, but he's like, seeing that white blank canvas can be frightening. It can be so scary. Like, how do you put the first mark on it? It's almost like writer's block. Like, how do you get started, right?
Okay, so I had the same question posed to me before my accident as a writer. Where do you start? How do you do it? And I love Stephen King responding, you don't get writer's block, you just keep writing.
Yeah.
And painting's a little bit similar. Now, one thing I do as a trick is I'll have someone else. I've got like anywhere from 4 to 5 assistants, not just for painting, but live and everything else. And they prep the canvas first. And a lot of times, now I'll always pick the color and, kind of go lighter, darker, bluer, redder, whatever. But at least getting that first coat on there is done. And it's like, it's no longer white. But there's other ways to do it.
Yeah.
In terms of like doing the drawing and it's such a weird thing, like what people want, what people expect, and the idea of art itself. What is art? What isn't art? What qualifies? And, I kind of get to the end of the day, I believe everyone's allowed to, think of it however you want to. And, some people like this, some people like that. And thank God, that's the greatest thing. My wife and I tell our boys all the time, it would be so boring if everyone was the same anymore.
Yeah.
Everything looked the same. It's like, it's wonderful because everything's so different and varied, and that's nice. It's wonderful. It's amazing.
So do you do like when you, and I want to talk a little bit more about the practical aspects of painting, but as far as the inspiration goes, are most of your paintings commissioned or most of the paintings you just create, or is it a mix? Like how does that work? And for the paintings that aren't commissioned, like where does your inspiration come
from? It's a mix. For sure. So, I'm practical enough that it's like, you got to check some boxes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the MFPA stuff, I got to get that stuff done. I know, and I've talked to them about it when I first got going. That art lives for the most part on postcards and calendars. Okay, who's your demo? Who's buying that stuff? Okay, this is what they like. So that's really kind of where I got started with flowers and a lot of that stuff. Flowers sell. It's easy. People can put flowers on a wall and no one's going to be like, dude, why do you have those there? Like, that's easy. Landscapes, flowers. In fact, even like horizontal layouts, they sell better than square or vertical. So
do they
there's
really?
there's these elements of practicality that I have floating around. So you check those boxes, and then thankfully the commission work comes and goes, and so usually I'll have a couple staggered that I'm working on, and then I get to kind of jump into what I want to do, and that's the hard part.
Yeah.
That's staring at the white canvas. It's like, what do you want to do? So then it's a lot of times my first answer is, I don't know. Like, what's going on? What am I painting it for? Sometimes I'll have shows at different places. And that, if I can get a bunch of stuff together, then you could have like a theme, which kind of helps.
Yep.
If it's random stuff, it's like one time I painted a heart that was about, man, it's like 5 or 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide, it's a giant heart.
I saw a picture of that when I was looking at some of your art this morning. I was going to ask you about that, where that came from. Yeah.
Well, I always love the story of John Henry, right? Like John Henry and the Hammer, a bit tragic, but yet like he still beats the machine. And I always loved that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to paint a giant heart. I don't know who's going to buy it. I might hang it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I put the initials JH just as kind of like, I don't know, let's see. To see if anyone's like, dude, is that John Henry's heart? And sure enough, someone said that.
Nice.
And they bought it and they loved it and it looks awesome. And it's kind of stuff like that. It's really what's interesting to me. You know, I grew up, my parents, all of our vacations were out west. So it's like New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona. So there's a lot of Southwest influence. I'm fascinated with nature, just continues to be incredible. Now that I've got 8-year-old boys, that's one of those things that we can all kind of watch together.
Yeah.
Not going to, throw up a lot of red flags, or we don't have to answer a lot of hard questions right in that moment. It's one of those like family things that we can watch. And so that's the stuff that kind of interests me. I want to do some, the space stuff's really interesting. So with 2 8-year-old boys, it's fun because it's like, you know, you're relearning some of this stuff and thinking about things that we haven't thought about in 30 plus years.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
cool.
So do you have a preference for commission work or kind of
Depends on the commission. It's a great. It depends on the commission.
Yeah.
I got a piece right now that I'm working on that they really gave me carte blanche. It was a really cool way it all went down. So they contacted me through an interior designer that was redoing their house. And so it was right when all the COVID-19 lockdown stuff was going on, like right in the very beginning. And so we got on a conference call probably about a month and a half ago. And, they were going to come to the studio, we were going to talk. And I was like, look, I'm reading all this news and I've been on an event. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
So is it cool if we do a conference call? I said, yeah, let's do it. So we did it that way and it was great. And then she had the suggestion of, what about if we go on Pinterest and I'll start throwing up stuff I like, and my husband will too. And, you do the same and we'll react to what each other likes. And we'll also send you a playlist. And I was like, all right, cool. I always listen to music when I'm painting. So we did it that way. And so we kind of like narrowed in on what they were looking for. And it was abstract.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, damn, I've never done anything. It's like, so it was like, wow, how do I get my head around that? And so we'll see. But it was fun because it was an adventure and it was something I'd never done.
That's really, so you said a couple things there that are really cool. But first of all, I would imagine, Jared, that somebody that commissions you and then kind of gives you freedom, that probably puts a little more pressure on you, right?
It totally does. It totally does. Like, I mean, in some ways it's incredibly liberating, and in other ways it's daunting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit like world pandemic, only without the death. It's like, do whatever you want to do. Let us know. And of course, I want them to love it and be happy with it.
Yeah.
And I think they, it's very trusting and great of them to know that, I'm not a J-hole. I'm not going to like paint a black line and be like, there it is, give me the money. So it's like they don't want to work on it. So I've been like working away on it.
Yeah.
And getting to a place where like they haven't seen it. They've seen little bits and pieces and stuff. So So we'll see. You know, I'm excited.
You said something also that I wanted to flag that as soon as you said it, I was like, oh man, that is super cool. You said you always listen to music when you paint. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like so cool. So tell us why you do that.
Oh man, I have to. Yeah, it's really the fuel. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
When I was in ICU beforehand, I saw big music. I grew up with it. My mom always had music in the background. It's kind of that backdrop to your life. I always had music around. And when I was in ICU, all my friends, I think my first words were, well, another story, but the first words were, oh, what was it? CCR.
Nice.
What? And no one knows what some like old school country nurse is like, he's talking about Creedence Clearwater Revival. And, you know, I'm like, so they put us the jam box in my room and just had music going. And so that was great. And that's just how I like that background noise to work. And so music's a big deal. And I always like having it on when I'm working. And
That is so cool. I was
yep,
listening to another podcast a couple weeks ago with the author Michael Lewis, who's written 8 or 9 really awesome best-selling books, including Moneyball. I don't know if you've seen that.
oh
movie.
yeah.
Liar's Poker. He's written all these great books, but he was talking about how every book had a playlist, and they were different. And then once he was done with the book, he would put the playlist away, and he could go back 10 years later and listen to the playlist, and it would put him back in that mental state that he was in writing the book. Yeah. So that is really cool. You know, I find when I really need to focus or really get in a flow state, that listening to music is one of the best ways to do that.
It is. And for the one that I'm doing now, the abstract, so they sent me a playlist, and it was hard rock. And I was like, all right, I that's interesting. It's not I mean, I like that too, but I was like, okay, you know, how am I going to approach that? So there were 3 songs by the Stooges, you know, Iggy Pop, some old school punk.
Sure.
I put those on repeat for the drawing, and I just listened to it for, man, it must have been 6 hours.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I apologized ahead of time to my wife and kids. I was like, sorry. But it was it was the cadence, it was the beat of it that was going fast. And you know, you might think this, but you know, when you hear it over and over like a playlist, it kind of goes away. And then you get really into what you're doing and you almost don't hear it anymore. And that's kind of how it was.
That is so cool. That is so cool, because you know, one of the things that Churchill talks about in his book, and again, I really hope you read it, is for people that have other jobs, for people that have especially real high pressure jobs, it's really hard to go from a really high pressure situation to just nothing, to just completely unplugging, right? And so Churchill talks about how painting is an active experience, and it's a way to relax your mind and use a different part of your mind. And music is the exact same way, right? Music is a way to get into a flow state where you're not thinking about anything, you're just doing. And so do you experience that kind of thing when you're painting, where like everything just drops away?
Absolutely. And that, my wife can attest to that.
Honey, it's time for dinner. That's the 3rd time I've told you.
It's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, they talk about it in Buddhism. I think it's called the Wu Wei, and the idea is to do without doing, and to know without knowing. And you get into kind of a meditative state where it's like everything else falls to the side, and you're looking at the shades of a blue for a while and changing it and that sort of stuff. And it does happen. And one of the guys, these guys have been painting for, oh my God, their whole lives. He compared it to meditation. And I was like, you know, I see that. There are times, and good times, when I get to that point. Sometimes it feels like a fist fight.
Yeah.
You know, it's a total, it's like, shit, man, I'm in the weeds. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't want to waste my time. It's that sort of thing. But, you just kind of hack your way through it and keep going. And that's really what I try to tell my boys. As I'm telling them and they're watching, I'm like, there's always a way to do something, guys. Like, there's always a way there. You can always figure stuff out. And that was the big mantra in the rehab hospital was never give up. And I was like, well, that's easy to say.
Yeah.
But there's some truth to it. And that is boiled down to its simplest terms. Like, just never give up, man. Just take it like we talked about at the beginning, 1 minute at a time. Sometimes it's one day, an hour, a month, whatever. And you just keep those tracks going at the same time, where it's long-term, short-term.
Yep. I want to talk about, because I read this morning too, and I thought this was really neat. You got, I don't know whether you were commissioned or I think you were commissioned to paint 2 large pieces for tier.
Yeah.
And are they still in the entryway?
As far as I know, unless if they've either been stolen or just torn down.
So for people that aren't familiar with tier treats people with catastrophic injuries, including a lot of people with paralysis. And so they commissioned Jared to paint two pieces for the entryway to tier. So tell us, and the names of those 2 pieces, by the way, I think are super cool. So tell us about those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting back to, there's just some things that people like. They're easy to hang for the most part. And I don't think easy, and that's not quite fair, but flowers and landscapes, one of those things that's very different than something that, because you have to answer for what you're hanging on the wall, right?
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind. So as I'm painting, I really, I'm looking at flowers now, which I didn't think I would be something I was looking at, but it's like, wow, it's crazy. They're amazing. There's a lot to them. They're complicated. And I kind of landed on orchids and thought they were incredible. They seem very simple. The more you study them, it's like, geez, they're really, really complicated. And then the more I looked at them, the more they started looking like vertebrae in your back and neck. So I painted 2 really long, they're like 12 feet long by 3 or 4 feet high. And they're 2 really long white orchids. And one of them is kind of going into the hospital, and it's a little more haggard, some busted up stuff. And that's a little bit like it felt like you're going into this hospital. It's not someplace you ever want to have to go, but thank God it's there when you need it. And, that's how I was. I was pretty beat up when I went in. I came out at least medically stable and knowing how to live. I don't know if I could do it, but you at least have the knowledge, right? And so the one going out is a lot smoother, a lot cleaner, and a lot more put together. But the names of them are C4 and C5, which means in the vertebrae, you've got your cervical, and then you've got
thoracic
and lumbar, right?
Yep.
So that's where your, C7 and up. C7 is the first one you see on your back. Everyone's got that little bump. If you're C7 and up, that's the club. That's the like, man, you've really done some bad shit if you break those or mess those up.
Yeah.
And I was C4 or 5. And so those the one C4, the other C5.
And I just think it's absolutely beautiful that people that are going through the same or very similar things that you went through or that go through tier get to see 2 paintings, 2 frankly huge paintings by an alumnus of tier. And the way that where did you come up with the idea of painting a more broken orchid, more broken flower on the left, and then a more developed, more mature flower on the right? Like where did you get that idea?
I think it gets back to advertising. When, if you will, think about that, the art and commerce, like usually there's some idea with a great ad, with a great campaign, all those things. There's an idea, there's a concept there for the ones that are really good. And that to me was like what and how people were with Tier. The idea you go in pretty broken up, you come out much better. And that's in its simplest form. And so that's kind of where I landed on that idea and where I landed with that image as far as the flowers. And it's like, well, they look like vertebrae. And so that was kind of how they helped me. So that's how I got there.
You talk about in your story, you talk about, and by the way, I want to ask you this before I forget. There's two things I wanted to ask you before I forget. Are you, because for people that are watching on YouTube,
sure,
you're leaning forward occasionally. I think you said earlier that's to help catch your breath, but has your mobility improved over time?
I don't think so. Like, I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I desperately want to be like, it's getting better. It's always better. And, I think I get stronger. I think what I have gets stronger. I haven't had a moment where it's like, I wasn't able to move my foot, now I can, or a toe or a pinky. The weird thing is, so like I've been to biofeedback, which I don't know if are you familiar with biofeedback?
I've heard about biofeedback, yeah.
Okay, so they, basically they can see if you're getting any signal to these muscles. I've been hooked up from my head to my toe, everything, and I have faint or trace signal to everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So like a lot of my problem I've got lots of problems, but the biggest thing around the injury was that there was so much time from the time I had my accident until I was treated. And that was really what did the most damage. But yeah, so I have signal everything. It's really just a matter of trying to either bypass or go through that damaged area.
Yeah. And you talk about painting yourself out of the wheelchair. Yeah. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, the way I thought about it early on was any platform, even like we're talking today. If I was an expert in sitcoms, we might not be talking, right? I didn't do anything. I just sat home, and that's fine too. I'm not knocking that, but I felt like, and I thought that the painting would allow me a platform to talk about spinal cord injury and talk about changing things in terms of, whether it's research, which is ongoing, and there's always interesting things going on, and that sort of thing, and just give me kind of a platform to voice what it is. Because quite frankly, like I said, until I was injured, I had no idea why people, I didn't know anything about paralysis really. Yeah. I knew, like I said, I knew what it was, but I really hadn't thought it through. Like, what is it? How long does it take? How do they do that stuff? So it's like, from Christopher Reeves, I'm not sure when his accident was, but he really gave it a face and kind of put it out there.
Yeah.
So
what's the latest research on that? Is there anything that you've read that's pretty promising?
I really do. I think there's a lot of great stuff. I think the big leap is going to be from small primates to humans. I think that's the part that's really, in my mind, the stuff I've followed, people I've talked to, seems to be the big leap, which is tough to see all the time, because it's been 15, 20 years that I had my accident, and there has been stuff where a lot of the lab rats are walking and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think moving it into clinical trials is expensive and it's time consuming.
What about the idea of, and I'm sure we'll be able to do this. Matter of fact, I'm 100% sure we'll be able to do this at some point. I don't know how long down the road it is, but what about the idea of having like essentially an exoskeleton or some sort of mechanical way to control your emotions? I know it wouldn't be the same as probably having your own, but
yeah, I think it's a great question. Yeah, an exoskeleton, they actually have something that they've been messing with and working on a tier like that. And there are a lot of things like that. It would be my son loves Iron Man, would love
It would be so cool to hear saying, I'm sure you are already,
yeah.
but you'd be even cooler. Yeah.
Right, if we get something like that, that would be amazing. So there is a lot of stuff like that. But to your point, you're right, because it is different still. But that is something that's going on. And it's a lot like I've been seeing, the power chair I use versus the first one is different in some ways, like it's smoother, it's easier to drive, things like that. There have been changes. So technically, like from a technology standpoint, stuff like that has gotten better too. Even the computer interface I use, the software, all that stuff, voice recognition on the phone, things like that. Everything's getting better. It's really, and when I got out of the hospital tier, a lot of the talk was like, you got to stay healthy because you never know when it's going to change.
Yeah.
And I do think that, like, my life changed in an instant. So why couldn't it change for the positive in an instant?
What an absolutely great quote. That is such a great way to look at things. And Jared, the other thing I think we can say with almost complete certainty is we know technology will get better. It's not going to go the opposite direction, right?
Right.
We know for sure things are going to get better. And the other thing is we also know, I think, that the pace of technology accelerates not on a linear basis, but on almost an exponential basis. So like we were talking about earlier, in 1999, there were no smartphones. And then 5 years later, they're ubiquitous. Like everybody in the world has a smartphone. It happened like in a blink of an eye.
Right. To the point. And so that's one of the things that I think is interesting about the tech part of it. And as AI continues and, the technology, like you said, it's not on linear. It's like a rocket. And I don't say it's straight up. It's incredible.
Which is the perfect timing for me to ask you my next question. You're wearing a NASA shirt today. I got to ask you why you're wearing a NASA shirt today.
So yeah, I didn't think about the fact. We went there, I guess, 3 years ago on a Christmas, I think it was, break or holiday break we took the boys there. They loved it there. We all got to geek out over rockets and moonwalks and science and space. So that was all really cool.
So I was going to ask you if you were wearing that because of the rocket launch that is happening, I think either today or tomorrow, maybe?
Yes. I'm not. Someone was helping me paint earlier. They asked me the same thing. I was like, what? And I missed that. But I heard about it, yeah.
Well, Jared, I hesitate to ask you this question because this is almost like asking you who your favorite kid is. But do you have a favorite work or a favorite piece that you've done, or a couple of them maybe? Something you're particularly proud of?
I think it's a great question. I think it's a fair question. I'm going to say no.
You like them all, right?
Yeah, I mean, they are really, it's crazy because I'll see stuff and I'll forget about it because usually in every piece there's like a little part that I love and a little part that I hate in every work. So when I see one that I've done that I haven't seen in a year or longer, I'll like, oh yeah. So it's kind of like that playlist. It brings it all really back to my head of like.
You ever see a painting and go, man, I want to go and just change that one little piece of it?
Yeah, they're never finished.
Yeah.
I think that's when they're better is when you leave them to where, if they're finished, they're no fun to look at. But if you leave them where they're finished, maybe not even the right term, but it's like it keeps it alive. Yeah. Versus when it's finished, it's dead and you hang on the wall.
It's almost like having a child, and then at some point you got to let them go. I mean, they may not be perfect. They may not do everything you want them to do, but at some point you got to just let them go, right?
It's the fate. It's you're launching a rocket.
Yeah.
It's going out into the world as an ambassador and diplomat, and go with God. Vaya con Dios. It's like, and you really never know. And I've had people that have seen work that didn't know it was mine, that contacted me later, people that knew me that had no idea my work was there. So you just, that part's cool. And then they have a life of their own.
So, Jared, before we stop, and I want to make sure that I think it's appropriate to say that yes, you're the artist, but you've got a team helping you, right? So it's not just you. You've got a group of people that help you. Talk a little bit about the team that helps you.
Yeah, it's no small task. As far as just to stay alive, like, you know, my wife helps, like, just amazing. I couldn't do anything without her. Like, it all revolves around that. Like, you have to be able to, I don't know, respect paralysis, or be aware of it, that it's difficult, it's hard. You know, she does so much for all of us, and we have people that help us, because one person couldn't do it all.
Yeah.
There's just no way. And so, you know, I've got it divided up into schedules where I've got a morning person that comes in and helps me do one thing, a person on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So it's really like, I'm fortunate and I'm blessed, because she's amazing, my wife's amazing, and all the people that come in, thankfully we've had good experiences, and they've worked with me for, boy, like 6 and 7 years.
And they mix the paint and they help set up the canvas. And
yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, you know, I'm a little bit more blue, a little more red. Let's fix those. Let's add this. And so, you know, and then some of it I mix on the palette. But yeah, I mean, it's something to live for 20 years without moving anything.
yeah. Yeah.
You
So
know, yeah.
You call yourself a romantic, and you say, make something beautiful, don't fold up and quit. I love those. I love those two thoughts. So tell us, elaborate on that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Well, you know, well, there was a painting that I did. It was the first big commission, and it was, I think it's either called The Big Chief or Two Wolves, and it's this old, I think it was Chief Seattle. And the story goes, and I might be butchering this quote, but basically there are two wolves inside of all of us. There's a good one and a bad one. Whichever one you feed is the one that lives. So you starve the other one. And I don't, with that being said, you know, try to focus on those good things, and try to focus on those positive things that are helpful. And it's really my wife and my boys, and, you know, my family and the people around me that I try to focus on, and you know, see those things, and whether it's, you know, what's the best quote of 2020? We have a, you know, summer of 2020, or the little things.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. You know, you go micro, macro, and you are constantly vacillating between the two. And so that's what I try to do, but not always am I successful. Like, you know, I fail all the time, every day.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you just got to keep going, you know, and sometimes I can do it. And then sometimes, you know, like my wife and I are joking, it's like, I give up all the time. End of the day, I'm like, God, I can't do this. Like, you gotta, I hand it off. Like, you know, I don't know what to do. There's gotta be a reason I'm here. Keep questioning, keep pushing, keep trying. You know, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
It's like, you still gotta, you know, I thought about it before we talked. So I was like, what am I gonna say? I don't know. You know,
it's so funny how many people think that.
well, the thing was, so like, I was like, okay, so what am I gonna say? And then I hop on, and you got Blake on, and I'm like, Jesus, he's elected to take 2 tours as a Marine Corps officer in Fallujah. It's like, how do you follow that? It's
Yeah.
like, I didn't get my yogurt today in the afternoon. So I had a buddy that was like, dude, just be yourself, enjoy.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's everyone's got their stuff that they're struggling with. if we're taking it back to the corona again, then it's like, at least we all have a name for it. At least we all point to it. And collectively, it's like, man, if we can just get together, if we can just be a little nicer to each other, a little more accepting, give everyone a hand. And I know we all have different ideas about how that works and how best to do that, but it's like, we got to just be good to each other and focus on those things. And there's just, we see so much bad stuff. We see so many negative things, which, that's what gets the attention. And so a lot of times we forget there's a million wonderful, incredible things for every one bad thing. And so it's like, focus on those things, or at least take your mind off the bad things with that for a bit. So it's a practice. I'm not preaching. I'm not a preacher. I'm telling myself this as much as I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, and Jared, that is a perfect way, I think, to wrap up the podcast. I've taken you over the time that I said I would take you, but one of the positive things I think people can focus on now during times like this is people like you. And the reason I wanted to get you on the podcast was to give people inspiration, show people that you can be faced with very difficult struggles, very difficult obstacles, and still be a joyful, romantic, optimistic person. Not all of the time. I'm sure your wife would say you're not like that all the time.
I'm telling you, it's a work in progress.
Exactly. We're all works in progress.
Right? We're all working. We're all learning things every day and getting our face punched. And, it's hard for everybody. And you got to respect that. And you got to try. I fail all the time. So, go easy on yourselves.
Well, you inspire me. You inspire a lot of people out there, and just keep doing what you're doing, brother, man. I love you. I'm so happy that you came on the podcast. I want to talk to you about maybe commissioning a painting at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get off the phone, Jared, and Blake was saying the same thing, by the way, when I talked to him. He goes, man, I need to get one of Jared's paintings. And so you might be getting some business pretty soon. Before I let you go, tell people where they can find you online.
It's at jdunten.com. And but I think you Google my name.
And that's DUNTEN, right?
It's jdunten.com. And you can look through my works. I think most of them there. I mean, there's a ton, but that's kind of the newer stuff. And man, just email me. The website's there. Questions. I love doing it, and I love making something for people and working with people to make something for their place. So I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome, brother.
You, man.
I love you. I hope we have Aggie football season this year.
Oh man, have a good one.
Yeah, good one, finally.
Great one. All right, man. It's good to see you, Brian.
Bye, brother. Good to see you, man.
Take care, man.
You too.
You've been listening to Lessons from Leaders with Brian Beckcom. If you've enjoyed this week's interview, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and keep up with the latest episodes. You can also connect with Brian through his firm at vbattorneys.com.